Welcome to Becoming Parents podcast. I'm Jenn Taylor, your host. I am mom of 18, and you can find me on momsrunningit.com. Remember, give a shout out to those who are brave enough to share their stories with us on how they have become parents. Let's dive right in. Hello and welcome to Becoming Parents. I'm your host, Jenn Taylor. And today I am really excited because today's guest is actually my daughter, Olivia. Hi. And you have your 7-month-old behind you. And because this is about being parents, we're okay with that.
Okay.
When the nap doesn't happen, podcast episode every day.
Truth.
You are my second daughter. People are always like, how many? Where are you in line? I don't even know. You were the second one born, and you are biologically my daughter.
Yes.
You were my first home birth. Ta-da! And you have two of your own kids. So today we're going to talk about your first delivery.
Yeah. That one was really fun.
I was lucky because best ever. I was really lucky because we planned on me flying there to help. And when you're like across country, I don't know if anybody else knows this, but like you can't plan when your baby's born. You were actually late.
Yeah. So I went in to be monitored 3 days after his due date. He hadn't been moving that day. And you're massively pregnant and you're very over it. And so he stopped moving. And it's my first baby. I don't know what's going on. I just know they say if movements stop for so long, come in. And I had tried calling the delivery room, like office people, about it, but nobody was answering. So we loaded up the car with all of our stuff. We're like, we have no idea if we're going to stay or if we're leaving or what's going on. So we just prepared for us staying. And we get there and got told that the number I had called was wrong and I needed to try calling a different number. And I was like, I'm here though. No, I had to call this number. So I called and I was like, hey, here's what's going on. It's now like 4 p.m. I haven't felt the baby move since like 7 this morning when he had hiccups. And that's it. And they're like, oh yeah, it's a long period of time to not have movement. So I get brought back. And as soon as I get back in the room, he starts to move. I'm like, of course, right? Like that's how it happens. And they have me separate from my husband. He has to stay in the waiting room. I have to go back because they have to, ask like, are you safe?
Oh, yeah. Right. Okay.
So that gets asked. And I'm like, hey, like the baby started moving. So I actually think we're okay. They're like, well, we're going to monitor you for a little bit anyway. So I got monitored for an hour. They let my husband, come back and sit there with me. So we get monitored and there's like, yeah, everything like baby's fine. You're fine. There's nothing to be concerned about, but you're 3 days overdue and we have a bed available. Do you want to be induced? And I was like, I want this baby out of me. So yeah, let's get induced. I was like, I'm done being pregnant. Like, and I didn't know that we were having a boy.
That's right. You didn't find out the gender.
We didn't find out the gender. So I was like, I want to meet who this little person is. I want to know. And I'm done.
Can I ask you a question also? Can I jump in? Do you feel, so this is your first time now. I had home births, which you were there for. I don't know if you remember any of that, but like you had been around delivery and it was an open conversation and I worked with moms and you were a nanny. So you actually at this point had probably more exposure to how normal birth was and information than most women going into their first labor. And yet, did you still feel unprepared?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I knew kind of the gist of what to expect. I knew what I wanted. I had been around babies and birth in those conversations. I did the Bradley method classes.
That's right. I wanted to talk about that. Okay.
for this delivery. So I felt like I was as prepared as I could be. What I wasn't prepared for was the lack of respect for me as a birthing woman by the hospital staff. And that,
Yay. I mean, not yay to you, but yay that you're bringing this up and you're saying that way, saying it that way. Okay. So dive back in. You're both there. You decide to get induced. Were you concerned? I mean, you did Bradley and you're very educated. Were you concerned about induction?
a little bit, yes. But I think at that time I was just so done
Yeah.
that I wasn't thinking like this is going to lead to it going badly.
Right.
And the nurse that I had when we went back, so we got brought back and it was right around shift change. So like we had somebody come in and then like the next person that came in was our overnight nurse. And she was amazing.
Oh.
She was fantastic. She went over the birth plan, was like, I've had 6 babies. And we were like, you don't look old enough to have had 6 babies, with the oldest being like 16. Like, no, but okay. And she was amazing. So she went over our birth plan, was like, yep. And she's like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. You don't want Pitocin. You don't want an epidural. Like, you want to do it as natural as you can. So this is the route we're going to take you on. So I got the Foley bulb, which sits on your diaphragm. So like your diaphragm is right here. And they fill it with like saline. And so it mimics the pressure of the baby's head on your diaphragm to help you dilate. So that got put in around 7 at night. And I didn't start like having contractions or anything until almost 11. So, you know, contracting starts. And at that point, I'm like, I can't sleep anymore. So it doesn't fall out. Most of the time it falls out, but she had to like kind of wiggle it out. It got stuck. And I was 7 centimeters dilated.
Right.
So I went in and I was about 2 centimeters and then I was at 7.
Right.
I'm having contractions and she's like, okay, you're doing great. Like, you're handling contractions like a champ. We're going to try and get you, you know, through this. So I'm stuck at a 7. Shift change happens again. She's like, I'm gonna be so mad if this baby is born in the next hour and I like just miss it. And I didn't know that she would be the only person that actually cared about me in this delivery. Or I would have done things a little bit differently. Probably. I don't know. So shift change happens. Our new nurse comes in and she has an awful attitude. Like, does not want to be there, does not want to be helping. Just, and I didn't know that I could have asked for a different nurse. I didn't know that I could ask for someone else. I could have been like, hey, you are not the vibe for this delivery room. Like, we need someone else, or you need to total 180 shift your attitude. And I wish I had known that beforehand, because I would have asked for a different nurse. She was awful. Now, my overnight nurse, we had talked about how breaking the water can help move things along fast, like move things along if we like get to a standstill. So the Foley bulb got taken out at about 2 a.m., I think. And I was at 7 centimeters and I stayed at 7 centimeters. So my new nurse just doesn't have a great attitude. Is like, yeah, I'm here kind of situation. And then we have a resident who's like the lead doctor, with like her supervisor kind of there also. And she's like a young, unmarried resident. She's very polite, but not like totally what I wanted. And then the head OB was a man, which on its own isn't bad, but nobody on my delivery team had given birth.
Okay.
That makes a difference because nobody else in that room knew what I was going through. Sure, they're all like labor and delivery doctors and nurses, so they know, but they don't know what I'm physically going through. They don't know like the pain or the contractions or transition or anything like that. But they come in and they break my water at about 7 a.m. And that made a huge difference in how the contractions felt. They were not comfortable, but they were manageable. Like I was getting through them fine, but then they break your water and there's no more cushion.
Yeah.
So it's like you're at like a 4 with these contractions, and then you're at like a 9 with these contractions. Like it's a huge difference. Not saying that the contractions were comfortably sitting at a 4, but like there was just a big jump in how the contractions felt and how I could manage them. And then it gets to be about 10. So my water has been broken for about 3 hours. And they come in and they're just like, look, you've been at a 7. Your failure to progress. You've been at a 7 for this many hours and your water has been broken. Baby's head is cocked weird. If you don't progress in the next hour, you're looking at a C-section. So you should get an epidural. I know you don't want an epidural, but you should get an epidural because you're probably going to need a C-section.
Which is the most terrifying thing you can hear as a woman in labor.
It just makes you feel awful. Like my body isn't doing what it's supposed to do. And then I have my husband who hears C-section. And while he's a great support, he starts thinking about, me having a C-section and everything going wrong.
Right.
And him being left with a baby and no wife. He starts thinking that. Because that's, the logical way your brain works.
Well, you've also been there for you've been in labor for 15 hours at this point. You've already, they've already started to do things to help. It's not you're also tired and you're scared and you worry about your baby. Like there's all this stuff going on, right?
Yeah. So all of these things, and he keeps saying those words, epidural and C-section. Like on repeat. You need an epidural because of a C-section. The chance of a C-section. You don't want a C-section, but you might get a C-section. So get an epidural. While I'm having these awful contractions because we broke my water, and finally I say, okay. I'm like, fine. And they're like, okay, we'll get you an epidural. By the time the anesthesiologist comes in, I have transitioned. I sit up and I'm like, those pressures kind of relieved. I feel like I've peed, but really it's not what happened. Instead, I've just swapped the position of the baby. I've hit transition. Past transition, I am feeling like I'm pushing. And I say, I feel push. I need to push. And my nurse is like, don't push. As they're prepping my back for this epidural that I don't actually want, but because I said sure, I feel like I have to continue with it. And I'm pushing.
Right.
And I'm like, I need to push. And my husband is like, then push. I'm like, they told me not to push. But when you're pushing, you can't stop pushing. You're pushing out a baby now. And I'm sitting up and in a position which is helping that, pushing thing. And my back gets poked 3 times because each time he starts, I'm like bearing down, I'm pushing a baby out, and everybody's like, don't push. And then I get the epidural, I lay down, have another contraction, and they see my baby's head.
What? Nani's here. My
Nani.
grandkids call me Nani. Hello, beautiful. Hi.
He's very tired.
Yes. Yes. So they see the head.
And then, all the people come into the room. And because I have been given an epidural, I have to stay on my back, which is the one way I did not want to deliver. And I'm feeling everything. The epidural hasn't had time to kick in.
Right.
And I ask if I can squat. I've been pushing for a little bit. It's not working. It's hurting. I'm not comfortable. It's not how I want to deliver. So I ask if I can squat. And the head OB, this man, says, no, you're doing great. We don't know how much strength you have in your legs. You're doing fine like this. Okay. And so I keep pushing, and I push in the worst way. I'm doing coached pushing. They're saying, tuck your chin to your chest, arch your back, hold your breath for 10 seconds, and push as hard as you can. Not how you should push. And then you take a breath and you have to do it again. And in between, I'm like, can I breathe? Ever? Is it just like, where is the breathing in that?
Right.
And so I'm like, I need to pause for a second. I need to take a breath. I need to just stop. And 20 minutes of pushing later, I have a baby on my chest. And I'm insanely relieved that it's over. And then we find out that we had a boy. Like, it took us a minute because
Right.
we were like, just like, hold the kid up, say what it is, put it on my chest, like take 2 seconds. And we're like, what do we have? And then, we find out it's a boy, and we're super happy that we have a little guy. After my delivery, yeah, you have thoughts on this? This isn't even your story.
This isn't your story there, little one.
Brothers, your story was way better.
So you're excited. You have him. You get through it. It's done. And then?
And then because of the way I... Do you need some milk? Let's try. Because of the way I was told to push, I had... This one? No? Okay. No. A tension-based headache. And so for the first week, I couldn't do anything. I had the worst head and neck pain that went like from like the base of my neck, like from like right in here up through my forehead. It was just awful. It was awful. And I was so uncomfortable. And they would come in when I was in the postpartum room. They would come in and ask how I was doing and how my pain was. And I was like, I'm at a 9, but it's in my head. I cannot tell you what anything else feels like. I cannot feel anything from like delivery. I can't tell you what my uterus feels like when you palpate my abdomen. I can't tell you what it feels like in, the birthing canal or any of that. I can't feel anything else but this. And nobody could do anything to help. There was like, here's some Advil.
And this was from the position that you pushed in.
This is from how I was told to push. And we had someone come to take pictures. And she has a picture of me pushing.
It's awful.
And I see it and it makes me so mad.
Right.
To see this. I'm so glad she got it, but it just irks me.
Yeah.
You want to chew on that?
I know anybody who's had a baby, if they saw that picture, you would feel where it would hurt just by looking at this picture.
Yeah.
So, I mean, tell me, you, even with all the education, with the Bradley classes, with all of that, there's still a couple times in this story where you didn't stand up for yourself. And I want to talk about, like, just briefly, like, why don't we stand up for ourselves in these situations?
I think, at least for me, there were a couple things. Like, one, I don't love confrontation. And I don't love bringing things up that can cause confrontation. And I don't like I don't like being yelled at, but I don't like when people are like, no, you're wrong.
Right.
When I feel differently.
Right.
And then there's the part where it's like, well, they're the doctor, they're the professional. They should know.
She's telling it like it is.
Yeah.
Baby. Right. And it's really hard to stand up to that authority.
It's really hard to stand up to that authority, especially when you're not totally sure what you're doing.
Right.
Like, it was my first baby. I didn't know a lot of things. I didn't know that I could have asked for a different nurse during the day. Or realize that I could have said no to the epidural when he was in the room. And I didn't know what transition felt like. Or that I could have been like, I feel push. Why don't you check me and see if I can push?
I think the other thing in this situation is that you shouldn't necessarily be the one that has to, like, you're a laboring woman. You shouldn't be the one that has to think about this stuff, process it, and then, like, you wrote a birth plan, so you wouldn't have to, you could do your thing and not worry about it. You have a husband there, so he's your voice. And it's interesting in so many situations where even the husband's like, maybe you should do what they're saying. Like, we talked about this for months, and so I'm not speaking ill of your husband. I happen to love him. Just husbands in general in that situation, you have the conversation, you write it all out, you think they're going to stick up for you, and then they don't, they buckle.
The thing, and I talked to my husband about it after, and he's like, it's so hard to see someone you love so much in that much pain. Mm-hmm. And to think coherently in that regard, which totally makes sense.
Right.
And when I'm like having contractions and they're saying epidural and C-section, and he's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right. Like you have any clue what's going on in that situation. I don't know
what I'm doing right now. I have no idea what's going on.
So that experience allowed you to realize how much we don't speak up and how much can go sideways just because you're in the room and in the situation, and that your brain as the laboring woman shouldn't be the one thinking about what you want at that point. What were some, other than the fact that you had a son who's now 2, what were the things that was there anything that made a positive difference in the labor? or was it just kind of a string of one thing led to another thing and you were faced with decisions? And were there any, other than your first nurse, were there really good things about it?
After they broke my water, no.
Right.
After that, and just kind of being at a standstill, they broke my water at 7 and they came in after 10. So there was a little chunk of time where I wasn't really bothered. And I was, trying to labor how I wanted to labor. And they come in saying, your failure to progress, we're looking at a C-section if nothing changes in the next hour. And you get terrified. And they broke my water. And I guess the only good thing after that was that they left me alone for a couple hours. Because once it hit 10, I just felt bullied.
Right. You know what? That is a great word to use, because it's like you're being inconvenient by not having this baby the way they want you to. And that makes me so furious. I want to shift, because this was not a good birth experience. You knew at the moment that you knew going through it, it was not a good birth experience. As soon as you get past it, and you had to wait like a week or so to get past it because you were in so much pain from your head, and you went to a chiropractor, you did heat, you did ice, you did massage.
Yeah. So I felt you flew in while we were still in the hospital.
Yeah, right. The day that he was born, the next day.
The next day, the night before we were going to be released.
Right.
So we were getting released the day after. And you flew in, and I originally had totally planned on him picking you up and bringing you to the hospital and you seeing us. And when because I was in so much pain, I was like, no.
Right. He dropped me off at the house.
And then came back, and you asked me about that later. And I was like, it wasn't that I didn't want you to come to the hospital. It's that I didn't want him to have to leave again.
Mm-hmm.
Because after he left, I had to stand up to change a diaper and like do that on my own. And I was in tears.
Right.
It was awful. And I was like, no. And you being there, the drive home from the hospital was awful. It hurt so bad. I was so uncomfortable. And seeing you in the kitchen when I got back to the house was the most relieving thing.
Oh.
Like, I was so happy to have my mom. And when I was in labor, when I was feeling bullied, when I was having that really hard time, all I wanted was my mom. But by that point, my voice had already kind of been taken away. So I didn't feel like verbalizing that I wanted you and that I wanted to call you would make a difference. So I didn't even tell Gayson that I wanted to call you. But I feel like if I had called you, if we had just been on the phone or if we had FaceTimed or something, it would have gone better. You would have been like, hey, hun, this is transition. You're almost there. Like, you've got this. You don't need the epidural. You don't want the epidural.
Right.
You can do this. And it would have been fine. But I didn't. Because I felt like I had already lost that chance to have the complete delivery that I wanted. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I do know. I want to end by saying, or by you saying, and then what happened? Because obviously you've had a second baby. We'll talk about that on another podcast episode. But he was born, and this is my perception. You were angry.
Yeah.
because you knew it could have been different. And then that made you think about every other woman who has felt that way or might feel that way in the future. And what did you decide to do?
I decided to become that voice for other women by becoming a doula. Because one thing that I wish that I had had was someone else there to be that voice for me. I wanted someone else who wasn't as emotionally attached to me and the baby like my husband was,
Right.
to be there to tell me, you can do this.
Right.
This is what's going on. You don't need that. Don't let them talk to you that way. I wanted someone else there to do that for me. So I decided to become that for other women. Because no one should feel like that when they're in the most vulnerable state of their life. And so I became a doula.
Yay, I'm so proud of you. And I love that. And you are vulnerable, and it's a different vulnerability because you're not just concerned about yourself. It's not like an accident where it's, you and you're hurt and you're not sure and what should I do? And it's like there's another life involved here, and it makes you vulnerable in a terrified way. Like any decision you could do is going to mess things up for this child too.
Yeah.
So I'm so proud of you.
I am so glad that I decided to do it. And my slogan, my motto is helping women feel seen, heard, and not forgotten. Because that's not, I didn't feel seen or heard. I felt like an inconvenience. I felt looked over, and no one should feel like that. So I used this awful experience to turn it around and help other women not have that.
I love it. All your information is in the description. People can find you, even though you are in the process right now of moving to Arizona. You can still do things virtually with breastfeeding support, prenatal, postnatal, virtually at the birth. You've done that too, because in the pandemic we had to really change things anyway, and so you can help women anywhere. So all of your information on your website. And Liv, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, I think good birth stories are nice to hear, but the hard ones more people relate to and might not realize that they also could have had a voice in their delivery more than they did.
Right. I'm glad that you're that voice. Thank you.